Okay, we're back here again, day 2. I'm Rebecca Bratter. You guys know me by now. I'm still kind of floating off of the energy from yesterday, but it was really a wonderful, productive day. It was long, I know, but it was so worthwhile for what we learned, for what we heard, for the interactions between the folks here and some of the relationships that were started and that will now carry on into the future to help us take our Bean message out into the world. So I'd like to get started on our first session of day 2. This is the first time that we're using this format. We're using today to really go into detail on 2 specific topics of importance that we think will help really expand our work, teach more, and help get more bean ingredients into products. And then, of course, we'll have the Beans is How gathering after those 2 sessions. Yay! Okay, so without further ado, let's get started with our first workshop of the day. And this workshop is focused on new product development with bean ingredients. And as we've kind of been speaking throughout the day, the interest is there. People are really getting the message about beans, but we need to do a little bit more on the education front to teach people how to work with bean ingredients. And of course, we still need to work out some of the supply side issues. So we decided that today, we're going to use this time, our first workshop, to focus on product development with bean ingredients, and I am very happy to have here with us today to lead this workshop Olivia Rode from ADM and Christine Lopez from Innova Insights, based here in Mexico. So Olivia and
Hello.
Christine, please join us and take us through this next session.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad the room is a little bit more full than what I thought it would be, because this session's going to be very technical. Just a show of hands, how many of you in the audience are product developers? Not many. Well, please, you'll make it through. You'll hopefully learn a lot from me. But my name's Olivia Rode. I work for ADM. I've been with them for roughly 13 years. I've been with them my entire career. And I started out as a product developer in snacks, bakery, and confections. That's really my area of expertise. But I had to learn how to formulate those types of products with all kinds of ingredients. And so that's where I really learned how to work with bean ingredients. So I'm going to walk you through a lot of different options that are out there. It sounds like from yesterday there was quite a few needs for bean flours and such, so I'm going to present those to you today, and hopefully you can learn a few pieces of that. I'll turn it over to Christine Lopez to introduce herself and take it away to start off.
Yes, so I'm Christine Lopez. I work for Innova Market Insights. I'm based in Mexico City, and I've been working for Innova for more than 10 years now. We're a market research agency, so I'm going to give you some insights more focused on the market, what our company is doing globally, which beans are being used. And I work directly with clients on the sales part, but also a lot on the analysis part and in different industries. So what is interesting from what I saw yesterday in the conferences and that I wanted to add at the beginning of this conference is that most of my clients in Mexico and in other countries in Latin America, they're looking into new areas of opportunity. They're looking into new categories. They're looking into adding value to their products. And in beans, I think that's something we saw yesterday, and that was mentioned by the other experts, that there's the basic offer in beans, and then you've got all those added value products that we can see, beginning to see in the market. So we've got those 2 markets, and we've got a good opportunity to add value to those products. So I'm going to, where should I point? Okay, to begin my presentation. So just to explain you a bit, at Innova, we tracked new product launches in 90 countries. So what you're going to see in some of those charts are the new product launches, meaning reformulations, new packaging, or new products with bean ingredients mentioned in the list of ingredients. So here what you can see is that we had a growth. I mean, in the 5 years that are analyzed, we've got an overall CAGR of more than 3% in global new product launches and more than 2% in Latin America. We had like a peak in 2022, and then last year it came down a bit, but at the end that's positive. So we would have to see how the market goes this year. And then we've got some product examples to illustrate or inspire. I know you've got like the marketplace outside, and some of those products, maybe you've already seen them, but what are companies doing in Latin America? Another comment is from those last years, even if legumes are like a very traditional part of the cuisine culture in Latin America, there were not so much processed products. And mainly in snacks, all the products that had bean ingredients were imported. And since last year, we began to see some local products being launched with beans. So here is an example of an imported product in Costa Rica of Peanut Crunch. And it's made with ground navy beans, and you can see the other ingredients there. So now, in innovation or new product launches, which are the main countries that are launching more product with beans? So here you can see that globally it's China, then the United States, and then Japan. So from all the analysis that I've seen that this information was based on, there's Asia that just is like a big user, consumer of beans. And then we can also see that the type of beans is different according to the region. Mm-hmm. And then in Latin America, we've got Brazil, then Mexico. So here we've got the two big markets of the region. And then we've got Ecuador. So on the right side, you can see that Ecuador is the fastest growing in Latin America in new product development with bean ingredients, with a 33% increase in new product launches, and you can see a nice product, local product, with peanuts, beans, corn, and chickpea. So here, in which categories are companies innovating with beans? So the first one, I mean, this one is not like so surprising because it's ready meals and side dishes. So here it includes everything from pasta, ready meals, and other side dishes. And here you've got an example on the right side of the feijoada de Brasil with beans. But then you've got some interesting categories, and that's what I was telling you about, that companies are trying to innovate in high growth categories and categories that are adding value to their basic products. So here we can see bakery, snacks, sauces and seasonings. And I think Olivia is going to speak about that later, but there's a lot of movement in the pasta, for instance. Pastas with legumes are growing a lot. All that is made with flours also. Chickpea flours is an ingredient that is growing. And then here you can see which are the fastest growing categories. So in the previous slide, we had the main categories that are using bean ingredients. And here you've got the main categories that have the fastest CAGRs. So the first one, and I think that's really interesting from what I heard yesterday, because a lot of the speakers spoke about like the educational part and that we've got to teach kids to eat better. And I think that's interesting that the category where the use of bean ingredients is growing the most is in baby and toddlers products. So it seems like the industry is just like going along this trend of also offering better and healthier products to small kids. And here you've got an example of Brazil with rice, beans, meat, and vegetables. So for babies from 8 months onwards. Mm-hmm. And then we've got some categories like meat substitutes that are part of this plant-based trend where legumes fit really well. Then you've got dairy. Then you've got meat, fish, and eggs. Here it's mainly about breaded products. In the breading, you've got a lot of like flours that use beans and other legumes. And then you've got desserts and ice cream. And from desserts and ice cream, what I was seeing, because here it's globally, so it was mainly from Asia, where they use like beans in some local desserts. So which are the beans or the types of beans that are growing the most in new product launches? Here you can see that the ones that are growing mostly globally is white kidney bean extract, more than 93%, and then Turkish gram, 57%. And in Latin America is fava bean, more than 53%, and red bean. So just to tell you, when you've got so high CAGRs, it's mainly because there was no launches with those products at the beginning. So we get very high CAGRs. And then maybe the other ones, for instance, red bean, it was something that was more common in the market. So there's growth, but not so much growth because we're just coming from a higher level of new product launches. And then which are the bean ingredients that are mainly used in new product launches? Other beans, it means it's not specified because we report information from the label. So if the manufacturer doesn't say which type of bean is using, we cannot know it. So that's why it's beans others. Then it's green beans, then black beans, and fava beans. And that's nice because in fava beans, there's also a lot of research and a lot of new applications. And you've surely heard about like aquafaba that many companies are developing into different applications. And here you've got a product that is a plant-based cheddar that is using fava bean. So which claims are used with products featuring bean ingredients? So globally, you've got the no additives and preservatives claim, high source of protein, and then vegan. And I think that's interesting because we were saying yesterday that there's a lot of health aspects in beans. And so the point about not adding additives or preservatives is very attractive for the consumers. And then obviously the part of the protein, and then the vegan thing, because you have this protein part that is very attractive also for the plant-based consumer, vegan consumer, etc. And then in Latin America, there is gluten-free. So that you know, when we've got this type of analysis, many times like Brazil deviates a bit the data because they've got like the obligation, it's mandatory to declare when you've got a gluten-free product. So that's maybe a bit because of the Brazilian data. And then we've got, again, like in the global market, no additives and preservatives, and the protein part. And there you've got two examples. So we see a lot of ready meals being launched to make it more easy for people to cook at home. That's another trend. So here you can see, for instance, lentils and beans, and another meal that is ready to use from Argentina. Here to speak about a different legume or bean that is also seeing some growth. It's the lupin that is from Peru, from the Andes, and it has a growth of 6% with bean ingredients that have an ethical claim. So it's interesting because we see that companies do also communicate on the social, environmental part. And we saw all those benefits that the bean ingredients can give to the product also on the communication side. And that's very important for the companies that use those kind of ingredients to communicate what they can, what is important for the consumer. And here on the left side, we've got a consumer survey where we asked consumers, what would you like most to see brand companies doing to help environmental or social causes? So first one is nature protection, then sustainable packaging, and then improving waste management. But the first one is nature protection. And so most of those beans have got these benefits that we can associate with nature protection. And we've got this product that's, I don't know if funny, but to see lupin drinks, because it's been something that's been around in the last months in some markets. And here it's in Ecuador. And they say rescuing the Andean lupin to guarantee quality superfoods with high nutritional value and a focus on sustainability. So we're speaking about health, about sustainability, and that's a very good way to attract the consumer to those ingredients. So here it's just about speaking about the plant-based trend. At Innova, we've got the top trends each year, and it's been now 5 years that we've got the plant-based trend in our top trends. And they've taken another perspective each year, but at the end, they're always within the trends, because we know that more people is trying to diminish their animal protein intake and moving to alternative proteins. And so just to tell you, this year what we see is that the consumer is looking for new formats in plant-based offerings. So obviously all the bean ingredients can enter very well into this trend of new formats. So what is pushing plant-based innovation forward? And we can see that the consumers have answered us that it's first because it is healthier, and then because it brings variety in my diet. The second and the third answer in the last years, they've been moving up and down. So during COVID, we had it brings variety to my diet in second place, then it went down, and then the planet came up. But then you can see that it's important to have new offerings, new flavor, new tastes for the consumer, and also that the sustainability part is very important for them. And one fact that we got from our surveys that is interesting for the Latin American market is that consumers know they can replace meat with legumes. And we've got almost 1 in 2 consumers that know that they can use legume as a meat replacer. And surely they know about the benefits, nutritional benefits of legumes. So that's interesting. And here you can see an example of a veggie burger made with beans, beetroot, and salted vegetables. So just to recap a bit, we can see that still ready meals and side dishes is the main category, but as I was telling you, there are new categories within ready meals that are growing, like legume pastas. And it's interesting to see baby and toddlers, that is the fastest growing innovation category. Then we've got gluten-free in Latin America, but it's mainly what manufacturers are claiming is mainly about no additives, no preservatives, and the protein claims also. So maybe we're missing the fiber claims that we were also mentioning yesterday. Then beans, green beans, black beans, and fava beans are the top bean ingredients. And fava beans is the one growing the most in Latin America. Then we've got a lot of processed ingredients from beans that surely Olivia is going to speak afterwards. And then we can see what we've mentioned yesterday about health, about sustainability, that are the main drivers for consumers also to consume this type of products. So I leave the word to Olivia.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to stand up just to shake things out a little bit. But thank you, Christine. We're going to pull in a lot of those trending pieces into the actual product development. You've seen these products that she showed that are popping up in Latin America. And I'm going to really dive into what bean ingredients are you going to pick to use in each of those products. But before we can do that, we have to really understand the functionality of these bean ingredients themselves. So that's what we're going to kick it off with. And many of you are familiar with the nutrient density of beans themselves. First and foremost, protein and fiber. And I think you guys heard enough of this yesterday. It was pretty drilled into you that these are some of the best reasons why we should bring beans into our products and consume them on a regular basis. But there's a few other additional components of beans that are also very important. Has a lower carbohydrate content. So if you're comparing it to standard ingredients that are used, such as corn, wheat, etc., these have an elevated nutritional profile with protein, fiber, and lower carbs. Many of you, I don't know if many of you are familiar with PD-CAS. It's a protein measure to measure how strong your proteins really are and how effective they will digest in your gut. And if you think of meat products those have a PDCAAS score of 1. So it's the most complete protein that you can consume. If you look at these bean products, it's significantly lower because they're missing some of these essential amino acids to make it a complete protein. But the way that we can combat this in food formulation is by combining it with other proteins on the market, whether we're going to combine it with a lentil or we're going to combine it with a quinoa and so forth. That's how we can make beans have a very high protein score. Now, consider this corn puff. We tasted the P-Nuff product yesterday, and this really puts that product to life in comparison to those delicious corn puffs that we all love from Frito-Lay. Those, as you can see, protein content, fiber content, calcium content, pretty low. But if you just substitute 50% of that corn in the formula for a navy bean powder, navy bean flour, you're going to substantially change the nutritional profile of that product, and you're not going to sacrifice texture or taste. We can cover that up with seasoning, so there's no worries there. And also, your color isn't going to change, which is also, it's just very important. Moving on to water absorption. We all know that beans need a lot of water to work. And we're trying to paint the picture for that right here. So if you look at the graph on the left here, you can see that a lot of different beans were measured for water absorption content. The beans here that are under the ADM column are actually cooked pulses. So they've gone through a processing step to start swelling those starches in the beans. And as you can see, they're absorbing a similar water content as the non-cooked beans listed, which is important. But also, this might be a little more applicable to you guys, is how do you formulate with beans compared to other ingredients and understand how much water you actually need to add into that formulation? You're not going to be able to substitute, just letting you know, you're not going to be able to substitute one for one, for instance, a black bean flour with a wheat flour, just because the water absorption is not the same. Beans take more water to work and to activate, and I keep repeating this because I want it to stick with you guys. So as you can see here, we kind of laid it out. What % of water do each of these grains need to fully activate within a food matrix? Color. I pointed out color with the corn puff. Color is a very critical component as well when you're formulating with beans. As you can see on this chart, the less of the vibrancy, the darker the product is how you need to view this chart. So if you consider a navy beans are very light in color. You can replace something like corn flour or a wheat flour with a navy bean flour and obtain a very similar color profile. If you want to make it darker, then switch to one of the beautiful beans that's out there, whether it's a black bean or a kidney bean, but you're definitely going to see that redness or blackness imparted in the final chip or product. Another piece of functionality is viscosity. Viscosity is very important, and this is where that starch within the bean comes into play. And what I wanted to point out here, these are all bean ingredients. Some of them are cooked. The bottom ones here, the bottom 4 are cooked. The top ones are not cooked. You're just taking a bean, you're raw milling it, and that's all you're doing. With the bottom ones, you're taking a bean, you're soaking it to start softening those skins. You're then putting it through pressure cookers. If you think of your Instapots at home, you're putting it through pressure cookers, and then you're drying it out and you're milling it. So those starches have had the chance to become pre-cooked, is what we call, start to swell, and in some cases, some of them have started to burst. Compared to the raw flours, that's not happened. This is very application dependent on what you are trying to create. If you're trying to create a baked good to where you need quick hydration to form a dough quickly, and it's going to soak up that moisture, you want to work with a pre-cooked flour. If you don't need that and you need that stability longer through the cooking process, you're going to work with a raw flour. But you can see visually these photos. It might be tough to see a little bit now that I'm looking at it, but how non-viscous and fluid the bottom 4 are compared to the top 3, which have really started to build viscosity. Another part of beans that's also important and almost new, some new research that's coming out, is beans' resistant starch content. And what's important about resistant starch? Resistant starch, what you need to assume or understand is that it's important for your gut, and it's going to create this nice, healthy environment for your gut microbes to survive and live. Resistant starch is not able to be broken down in the large intestine, which is good because then it can control glucose levels. And I will show you a graph on a future slide of how beans can actually suppress that glucose response when you're consuming food so that you don't get that high glucose spike. But these are different types of beans. You've got raw bean grits and cooked bean grits, larger particle sizes that have a very high resistant starch content because they just haven't been broken down and milled as much. We found a very strong correlation to resistant starch content as it relates to particle size. Resistant starch 2, the second type of resistant starch, you can see that it's slightly lower than RS1 in beans, and then RS3 is even less. This is what I was trying to explain earlier. But you can see, if you look at the graph on the left, just the resistant starch content of beans compared to other ingredients. Comparing it to corn, comparing it to rice, beans have a much more elevated level of resistant starch. But if you look at the graph on the right, you can see that glucose response that's been measured comparing legumes to other even finished products on the market and that response. So you've been able to really suppress that curve on the graph down, which in turn is a positive for us and our health. You're also able, with the higher resistant starch content, you also have more short-chain fatty acids, which are another component that is very good for your gut microbiome, and you're able to lower that pH in your gut. I mentioned that particle size is also a key component to resistant starch content, and we tried to lay that out here. If you look at the graph on the left, you can see that the coarser the product, the lower the glucose spike is. So if you're looking for something that's going to be formulated in a snack that should be served to someone who might have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you might want to formulate with a coarse flour more so than a very fine particle size flour, just because of the way that it spikes that glucose. And then if you look at structure, this is how much processing has actually been done on the bean itself. Looking at raw flour versus cooked flours, and then rice starch. Rice starch is pretty low. It's about the same as cooked flours, but those raw flours have a much greater level of resistant starch than cooked flours do. Because the skins are intact, you're not losing that skin, you're grinding that skin right into that final finished product. So it's allowing that fiber content to not be disturbed in any way. All right, so these functionality components, we've now really started to build our toolbox. I know the word toolbox was mentioned yesterday, and I loved it because it is so important to us as product developers. Building this toolbox to then understand how to really work with these bean ingredients. So we've got color we've talked about, we've got nutrient density, we have viscosity, resistant starch content. All of these things matter when you're trying to select and pull in a bean ingredient into your formulation. Now I'm going to shift a little bit to those beautiful applications, and they're going to start passing out chips for you, as well as some puffs. So we've got chips They're Aldi branded bean tortilla chips. And then we've also got Simple Mills new puffs that are on the market to pass around and share with you guys. So they're going to start doing that. I've got 4 applications I want to walk through quickly here. The first is snacks. And I tried to pull out 2 different products in each category. And the reason why I wanted to do that was because whether you're trying to create a dough or you don't care about creating a dough, it matters what type of finished bean ingredient you're going to put into it. So for chips, bean chips especially, you're creating a dough, just like you create a bread dough at home. You want that very water-heavy, moist flour and water combined product that you're going to then sheet, and then you're going to cut it. So that's important because to create a quick dough and to get a bean to hydrate quickly so that you don't have to soak it for hours, using those pre-cooked beans is really going to help you get there quicker. The other thing that's neat is there's these different particle sizes, which we've talked about. You don't just have powders and flours to work with, but you also have grits in our toolbox to work with. And grits add a wonderful amount of texture to a product. So if you try those chips on your tables, that crunch is really going to come from not just the powder, but even more so the grits that make up that formulation. If you think of a corn puff, they are an extruded product. Extruded products do not need that initial dough to get you started. Extruders are processes where you're bringing in pressure, moisture, temperature to really then mix within the process. So you don't need to form that dough in the beginning. We're putting dry ingredients into your extruder, and then they're coming out because they've been hit with this pressure and this moisture. Then they're able to really puff. And why do they puff? Well, there has to be a lot of starch in your extruded product formulations. So beans have a lot of starch, but with this, you've got a little bit more flexibility. I pulled in the 2 cooked bean options that you can use when you're extruding products, but you can also use raw beans in extruders, and it'll work pretty well for you. But this, again, I haven't pointed out the meal. It's just a different particle size that's available to try if you're looking for something with a little bit more coarse of a texture. Bakery. Christine mentioned gluten-free and how that's a top claim that's really coming to the top of the trend lists. But it was also mentioned yesterday. Gluten-free bakery is here to stay. And one of your best tools for gluten-free bakery is using beans. Beans are gluten-free. So if you're trying to create, whether it's a waffle or a cracker, which again are 2 very different formulations, within a waffle, you need to develop that gluten, that structure to allow it to puff in the baking process a little bit, but also just to maintain its integrity. So using a pre-cooked navy bean flour in combination with a raw bean flour could be a great mashup of ingredients to do that in a waffle. Because you need something like a pre-cooked bean that's going to hydrate really quickly, but then also you might need that robustness of a non-cooked bean to carry you through that baking process. In terms of a cracker, the seed cracker you see right here, you're not needing to develop any type of dough or gluten, right? It's very thin. You don't have to worry about any of that. So working with raw beans, cooked beans, anything will work for you. And if you want to visually see the texture, then pull in something that has a little bigger particle size, such as a dehydrated pre-cooked bean or a bean grit. Plant-based meats. We've seen this category this year in particular just really drop off. I don't know about you, but I would much rather prefer a product that I can visually see a bean in than a product that mimics what meat looks like. I resonate that with healthiness, wholeness, and I would prefer that. So you can see these products on the market, the first one on the left, you can visually see those beans. The product on the right, you can't. It looks like chicken to me. So the product on the left, to be able to see those beans themselves, but to get something that's going to soak up that moisture in your product, maybe using a pre-cooked bean will work for you because it's going to hydrate quickly, it's going to freeze really well. Most of these are frozen products. And then using a black bean grit to absorb moisture is also something you can do. One tip, because beans soak up so much moisture, in many applications, you can formulate with more water. And what does water mean? Low cost, very inexpensive. In bakery, maybe not so much. Sometimes water is expensive because you've got to bake it for longer, and that's an expensive cost. But for something like a burger, to where you can add more water into that formulation, it's going to save you money, which is important. We all like to save money. And then this is a thought starter, and this was mentioned a little bit yesterday as a need that's in our space. There's a need for more bean proteins that can mimic the other robust proteins on the market, such as a soy protein, such as a pea protein. We have a few out there. I think chickpeas on the rise, higher protein chickpea powders. We don't have a navy bean protein. We don't have a black bean protein. So just a thought starter for you a little bit is, how do we get there? How do we create those processes to be able to do that and extract that protein from the bean? Of course, then we're going to have side streams that we have to worry about. We're going to have a lot of starch to worry about. But we're going to be able to then create more of these meat alternative look-alike products that are in the market today by using beans. I will tell you, I've thought about this process, even having ADM look into it. It's very expensive because bean content, protein content is just that much lower than what you've got out there today with soy or pea. It's going to take more energy and cost to be able to extract it. So maybe that's why it hasn't been done too much today, but just something to get you guys thinking about. And then the final application category, which Christine kind of led me up to this one, was pasta and the growth of bean-based pastas in the market today. Many of them have combinations of beans with other ingredients. This one is a bean and quinoa flour pasta. But beans work really well to 100% replace wheat and pasta. And that happy medium that you're looking for in pasta is something that's going to be able to hold up during shipping. You don't want it to be too brittle and get a box full of broken pasta. We'd probably take it back to the store if it was all broken and say this product's crap. So how do you get around that? Well, you're going to, what I found and through our research, is that using a combination of raw bean flour and pre-gelled bean flour is important. That starch that's already been pre-cooked in a pre-cooked bean, adding that into the raw flour is going to allow you to have a more firmer product that's less brittle, so it's got more extensibility, but the watch out is during the cooking process. If you formulated with a pre-cooked bean for pasta, 100%, you start to throw that in your boiling water, this is what's going to happen. You're just going to get mush. So that's why you need a starch that's going to be able to withstand the heat process of the cooking, and that's why you need a combination of the two. So 70% raw bean flour, 30%, well, maybe even less than that, 15 to 20% pre-cooked bean flour is the perfect combination to get a pasta noodle that'll hold up in your box, that'll cook quickly. You can see here that we're cooking this pasta in a time span of, I'd probably say 4 to 5 minutes is what you wouldn't want to cook it over that, or it's going to turn mush. But it's going to have a great eating experience for you. And then this is just a little fun picture of this is actually a lentil pasta that our teams were producing in our labs a few years ago, and just the vibrancy of the color of the lentils I thought was very pretty. But we could probably do that with beans as well. So with that, we'll turn it over to you guys. Ask away, ask any questions that you have. We're here to help you.
Great presentation, thank you. I have a comment, Olivia. That's been our finding too. I'm at Harvard and we work closely with students. And in the fall in our survey, 83% students voted positively for the menus. And the qualitative comments we received was, we'd rather eat pure plant-based based ingredients and menus rather than the plant-based alternatives. So
Yeah.
I just thought.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree completely. I would much rather have a bean burger that I can see a burger that I can see the beans in than a burger that is trying to mimic that texture of a real beef burger. Thank you. It's interesting.
I've got another comment based on that, that also with the service we've done for the last years, as you've seen, that plant-based has been on and on for around 5 years now. For the first time, also, I think it was last year in the service, it happened that consumers said that they don't want any more mimicking products. It was like the first answer they said, and they wanted like real products. So that's also what we're seeing in consumer service, because they think that most of those products are like ultra processed and that they don't have the right nutritional values they're looking for. So that's funny because the classic categories for plant-based were at the beginning dairy and then also meat substitutes mainly. And so consumers are not looking mainly into those categories anymore for innovation in plant-based. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Yes. I'm going to ask one, Jose, thank you. First of all, I want to let you guys know that one of our buyers lost her phone. It's a Samsung. In case you see it somewhere around, please let us know. Thank you. So my question is, how are you guys keeping up with the demand? Because as we all know, there's not a lot of suppliers of bean flours, to my knowledge, and ADM is like one of them. So it would be good to know if you're getting more orders and how is that moving?
Great question. I would say we have plenty of supply for you right now. We're still in this infancy of adoption for bean ingredients. We have shown how they work in formulations. We've shown how good they can make your products taste and look. We're just waiting for you guys and your customers really to come to us with your needs and let us help you out and help you better understand. I just think there's such, there needs to be more adoption in the market for these types of ingredients. What I've seen happen is they get launched and many times people will buy them once, but they're not repetitive buyers. And these products only have about 3 months even to be successful on those shelves. So we're trying to change that. We'd like to see a bigger change of that. We've got plenty of supply. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentations and your inputs. I think it's very important to hear about you guys. But I was curious to see the top claims. And I realized that fiber is not on that list. Why is that? I mean, there's preservatives and the protein, but not the fiber. Why? Why is that?
Oh, I don't have the answer. That's like a communication thing about manufacturers. And I mean, we see that in many trends. Many times the products like go along with the trend or what the consumer is looking for, but companies don't mention it, or their marketing departments are not thinking about this like attractive claim that they can give. So I'm not sure.
So do you think it's a consumer perspective, or it's only because, you know, the marketing teams, they're not communicating?
I think that's like marketing teams are not communicating it. And also, one of our top trends this year is about ingredients and the importance that is taking for consumers. With COVID, many consumers became more health conscious, and also they're looking for more information in the web and in social media, everything. And we saw that ingredients is like a real focus now for consumers. And what we saw is that protein, globally, it's the #1 searched ingredient for consumers. So maybe that's also because of that, because manufacturers, maybe they're focusing on the protein trend and not so much on the fiber trend.
I think there could be a really strong connection with some of this resistant starch data that we've been collecting and others have been collecting that comes from the fiber. So getting that message out about this gut health that you could receive and benefit from with beans would hopefully start changing that, and consumers would love to see those fiber, maybe those fiber claims would really start to rise to the top of the list.
Just like to add to this conversation, I've got quite a lot of experience in claims globally, and it's so product specific and context specific. So I think it's kind of dangerous to think is generic claims that will suit all consumers. So fiber is a really viable and important claim, but in certain categories, in certain kind of contexts, and certain geographies as well. So there's no reason why beans can't kind of, claim fiber, but it's got to be kind of within the right product mix as well. It can be, a differentiating claim. Yeah, differentiating, yeah.
Olivia, thanks, and Christine, thanks so much. I have 2 questions. The first question is, if you were the Dry Bean Council, or Beans for How, or whatever, Beans is How, what would be, and you had 2 things that you could choose to help build the demand for flour, what 2 things as a council do you think that we should be doing? Should it be trade shows? Should we be doing more technical training? I mean, what do you think that we should be doing to get going with the industry? Is it just getting the noise out there? That's the first question. The second question is, why do you think the new products are failing?
For the first question, if I can take a stab at that, I think both are going to help. Education, getting in front of these large CPG companies or startups, getting in their door is really going to help. But also trade shows, because that's where a lot of product developers go to find their inspiration, to find their suppliers. So if you can attend more of those trade shows and have those bean flours readily available, I know you guys did that at IFT, but just keep doing it, keep having that presence, and I think it will really help. Second question, you want me to take it, or you want to try?
Okay. Yes, I can tell it.
Both. Go ahead,
Well,
Christine.
also, not just like from what I think, but from the surveys we do, mainly the plant-based products that are launched on the market, the main challenges are like taste, texture, and price. And that's what consumers say. So the products are launched, and then they're not so good, and they're very expensive. And so consumers think, why should I buy something that is more expensive and that tastes less good than the other products? And I think that's why people are moving away from mimicked products to real plant-based or natural products also. So that's my point of view, and from some surveys we've done.
Yeah, because they're going to, if you were to see even a bean on the front of a package, you're already going to just assume that it could taste like beans, and you're buying that because hopefully you like the flavor of beans. I think I agree with you 100% that price is a big challenge. If you have on the shelf a tortilla chip made out of corn and one of the bean chips that you guys just tried, the price is vastly different. Also the amount in the bag is vastly different. And so what are you going to choose? What type of, income do you have to work with? And in many cases, you're going to choose the lower cost product that you've had before, the flavor is great, rather than trying something new. So we just have to shift that.
So is it an economy of scale? Will that make a difference in terms of volume and stuff like that?
Maybe a little bit, but we have to get there first.
Olivia, I have a quick question for you. I noticed on where you were using pre-cooked flour, I think I understand the lectin neutralization that takes place there. Mm-hmm. When you're making a product without the pre-cooked step, and assume that goes into a cracker or a pizza crust or something like that, how are folks managing lectin in that application?
The processor will have to make sure, hopefully it's on the processor's end so that you guys are at less risk, but the processor will have to make sure that they go through an effective heating step to be able to reduce that lectin level and kill it, essentially. We don't recommend anyone eating raw bean flours plainly, just because they also haven't been tested for any other microbial content. So going through a heating process is critical when you're consuming a raw bean flour. It won't be raw then. It'll remove that risk factor. So make sure it's cooked. Even with pasta, we all know we shouldn't eat raw pasta. We all should wait until it goes through that boiling process.
Yeah, thanks both of you. Maybe to you, Olivia. I'm thinking that one way to increase the consumption of beans, probably the bean pizza for the vegetarians. Rather than animal meat toppings, you can use beans, flour, pre-cooked beans, and improve the quality of the pizza. How that is possible? And my second point is the functional property of beans. How is it possible to extract some ingredient which can be commercialized as another different product from beans? I mean, I'm not sure fiber, I'm not sure. So what could be the chances and the opportunities the industry to extract some element from beans and commercialize them separately? Yeah.
So if I heard you right, the first comment was just around pizza? Okay, yes. Pizza is a dough-based system, and you can get anywhere from 15 to 20% of beans into that formulation for a pizza crust. We've done it before, and it works perfectly. It has great flavor, so that's a great idea. And then the other question was specific to, trying to remember here, just left me. Can you repeat it again?
About some extract, some very good products we can develop out of beans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's doable. It's just going to take a lot of infrastructure and a lot of cost to be able to start extracting components from beans. But it's doable. I'd like to see, like I said, I'd like to see more bean proteins out there, edible bean proteins, right? Rather than a soy or a pea protein, I'd like to see some bean proteins out there. But it's just going to take a lot of work to be able to do that. Anyone else?
There is a mindset at the market of the bean flavor, which could be a tip to change the mindset of the flavor and teach the customer the benefits of eating this substitute of beans instead of choosing another substitute.
Just around the mindset, shifting the mindset to be more accepting of the flavor. That was your comment? Yeah. Yeah, and that comes with education, right? And trying the products themselves, getting them in front of more people to try. Okay.
Have you worked with the splits? Splits?
We have a little bit. There's been some pushback from our customers with splits just because they feel like they can't call it a whole bean. And they really want to be able to call that out on their label because they think consumer preference would be for that whole bean. If you think of from a nutritional profile, if you're using splits, there's not going to be any change. Cost will be substantially lower. I had a quick convo with Joe about that yesterday, and maybe we need to start looking into that some more. But then, are there enough splits out there in the market? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. How do we address the beanie flavor of bean ingredients when you use bean ingredients?
I would recommend you're not going to be able to take care of it as is. It's always going to taste like a bean, really. How you can change that is by working with flavor modulators or maskers. A lot of flavor companies offer those. There's some great work out there today, even for soy proteins and pea proteins, to mask off notes, whether it's a bitter off note or whether it's a greeny off note. There are compounds out there that can do that. So if that's something of need in the market, is to reduce the beaniness because consumers don't like it, then adding a mask or a modulator to that formulation can work. And many of those are just labeled natural flavors. You're already using natural flavors in many cases, so it shouldn't cause any issues for a consumer. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you all for your attention. Please let us know if you ever need flowers. You have my contact information. Let me know if you need flowers. But thank you.
Thanks.